our goals today. You're going to experience a ThinkCERCA lesson from a student perspective. Sarah is going to talk with you all about connecting it to the Math Vision, and then we'll talk about how you might use this in your math classroom. And so, Sarah, if you want to take it away and talk a little bit about how the platform organizes writing lessons.
Yep. So when you first log in, it takes you directly to the ELA pieces. If you see on the top left where it says ELA, Social Studies, Science, Math, you just have to scroll down to Math and click Math, and it's going to organize it by content area, and then if you scroll down, it's also by theme. I highly suggest you go by content area first. Because then it's aligned to the domains of mathematics. And so like we just finished, unit 1, or you're just now finishing unit 1 in IM or within our curriculum frameworks, all of them start with geometry. When I click in geometry, they are directly aligned to our curriculum frameworks and standards. So then it's already there for me. Because like in 6th grade, it was about area. 7th grade was using maps and scale drawings. Then 8th grade was all about transformations. So they're by the domain, which makes it easier for you to sort by standard. The theme, you would have to go in and determine what standard it's aligned to. However, the theme will be very beneficial if you're starting to work on interdisciplinary lessons across your content areas and across teams. That may give you an entrance into how does math work in this content area? What are we doing that we could build onto? So you have 2 different options, but before you get too far, I definitely recommend you go by content area to get familiar and see what all is there.
I think one thing, just to talk about the platform for just a second, the intent and the design of this platform is to be a driver for school-wide literacy and to have accelerated growth for students. And I think one thing that's really great about this is I know many years ago, probably you all had portfolios and you probably had to make students write things in math class or in science class or even social studies that was not authentic to your discipline. And so I think what these math tasks do and what this platform does is it's offering a common content literacy framework that students can experience across the school, which we know really, really benefits our low to intermediate learners. It creates possibilities for differentiation, but then in math, they're doing math tasks. They are not writing about or doing things that are inauthentic to the discipline. And so the intent would be that students could experience 7 ThinkCERCA writing lessons across their entire year across disciplines. That's where their case studies and independent research have shown the most growth for students. And so if our ELA teachers are doing some of these, our science teachers, our math teachers, you can see how we could really this could be a primary driver for improving student literacy and critical thinking. And so here is just a tour of the platform for math. We didn't want to take you through all of that. Some of you probably maybe attended the initial training for the platform, and it just kind of guides you through how the platform's organized for math and how it's connected to standards and practices. And it's about 4 minutes, so you can watch that at your leisure. All right, so we today are going to be talking about this lesson, which is in integers, and we're going to focus on this 7th grade lesson. And so you'll see here that you can scroll back and forth, more challenging, less challenging, and there's going to be a prompt connected to a task. Why do I always do that? And so this one is, what rules explain whether a pair of integers will be positive or negative when added together? And Sarah, do you want to explain, you said it last time, that when you toggle up and down, how does the prompt change with regard to math?
Like in this one, if I went less challenging, it would go to 6th grade, and it is the 6th grade standard. So like in 7th grade, you're going to be focusing on writing a shortcut for the operations, where in 6th grade it's more about the absolute value and distance from 0. And then the 8th grade one will be aligned to the 8th grade standards. So when you go less challenging, it takes it down a grade level. When you go more challenging, it takes it up a grade level. And so they do a very nice job of aligning them to the actual standard, so that it's not just the same one at a lower like reading level or writing level or whatever, but it's aligned to the standards too. So it's a really great tool to help scaffold learning, but also provide those tiered interventions for students if they're not ready to enter the 7th grade. We now have a prompt in 6th grade to get them ready to do the 7th grade.
And I think another piece to your point about the text is in the platform, it's not like Newsella where you have the same text just lexiled up or down. It's authentic to the task. So I think that's a really important thing, and that's much, much better in terms of, I think, alignment to your standards and practices. And then from a literacy perspective, it's much better for students to have authentic texts that were actually written at that level, if that makes sense. So we are going to have you all actually engage in a ThinkCERCA lesson, this one right here, as though you were students. And I'm going to be sharing my screen in platform so you can kind of see how we get there. And so this is the student view. So they're going to see across the top, connect, read, analyze, summarize, build, and create. And they can toggle through these, right? And so we're going to go ahead, and do this lesson as though we were teaching you. And so for this connect step, we certainly could have assigned this asynchronously, but I really want to, this might be like the first time that I'm really engaging you in ThinkCERCA. And so I want to make sure that you understand the steps and that we're getting at the kind of reasoning and thinking that I want. And so Sarah and I are sort of co-teaching this. And so here in the slide deck, we'd love for you to go ahead and click on this Jamboard. And we're going to have some commenting in Jamboard around images that are showing patterns found in nature and those that are man-made. And so we'd love for you to go to this Jamboard. It'll take just a second to load. And you're going to take a look at these patterns, create a sticky note, and answer the question. Are these found in nature? Are they man-made? And then write a description. And you can just move your sticky note to be on top of the image that you choose to connect to. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to respond here in the Jamboard and make these connections.
I'm sorry, I've gotten lost. Are we supposed to be on the ThinkCERCA page answering this question?
No. Did you get the slide deck open?
Yes.
Okay, go to slide 5.
Okay.
And in the bubble, there's a Jamboard. Click on the Jamboard. Did you get in the Jamboard?
So right here, there's this bubble that says virtual engagement. Look at the images on the Jamboard. If you just click on the word Jamboard, it'll take you right here.
I think she might be having internet issues too.
Thank you. I just got lost.
There you go. Yeah. So you want to be sure that you add that description into your claim if it's a nature or a man-made one, because we want to be able to start describing what those patterns look like. So we see that.
Sorry. How do I answer? I'm there. How do I answer?
So
So,
go ahead, Suzanne.
Dana, just go over here. I'm sharing my screen. If you go over here to the little sticky note and you click on it, it'll bring up a little sticky note that you can type in, and you hit save, and then you can move it around the screen like I am.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I've
No,
just
you're
never
great. Perfect.
used it. I'm sorry.
That's what we're here for. Try new things and learn. So we're seeing in that pyramid that there's lots of rectangles and that they're stacked on top of each other, that it's definitely man-made. Ooh, I like this where it starts off wide at the bottom, then gets narrower at the top. Then we see in the braids, never thought of braids being a pattern. Of course they are. They are man-made, but might be modeled off of something in nature. And this pattern appears to be triangles or squares with a midline cutting through. That's really interesting that they are man-made, but maybe modeled off of something in nature. Wow, that's an interesting thought. And then we have the one that's found in nature. It looks like veining in a plant. It looks like there might be a center and a kind of a circle center, but it's spiraling instead. Ooh, parallel lines on that braid with the man-made in the braids. Excellent. Love the use of the vocabulary there. So we're going to expand and look further into patterns that are found in mathematics and see what connections we can make as we work through this prompt. Nice job, everybody, responding.
All right. So the next step in the CERCA, so first we did a connection and we brought in that virtual engagement strategy of the Jamboard. And then this follows a close reading scenario where students, we know that it's really important for students to engage in probably a first read, a second read, and then go deeper as they go along. And so now what we would probably have you do is we would have you read this this passage just quickly and skim it. And then there's a couple multiple choice questions here. And these multiple choice questions you will get data about. And so this kind of is a nice little formative assessment to see if students are kind of getting it on the first read. And then our next step would be to do a second pass through with a closer analysis. And we're going to take you through how that could look by modeling it in platform. And so we're going to go to our next piece, which is our analytical step. And I'm going to show you that in ThinkCERCA's platform. And Sarah and I are going to model what you could do as a teacher to show kids how to engage in that part.
And we had a question about the Jamboard. So at the end, there's going to be a link that shows you how you can use these lessons in a virtual environment. And that's one of the suggestions, is to use the Jamboard. If you use Nearpod instead, you know, same thing, you can use the collaborate mode within Nearpod. The connect and the read, the first read, as I'm thinking of how to do this virtually, those two pieces could be done asynchronously, and those are things students bring to the lesson. And then the part that we're getting ready to model here of the Think Aloud may be where you pick up and you review what they did. So you go over the Jamboard like we did and amplify their voices. Then you look at that formative assessment data and you can give feedback on that first read. Then the second read you would do in the synchronous session. So Suzanne, what I see is the original question.
Okay, so you are not seeing, I think maybe I shared just my tab. So sorry.
Okay.
Are you seeing?
I'm seeing the platform integers, like we either have to go in the preview part so that we
Yes, yep, okay, you're seeing where I'm at. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that when you first enter the platform, just to reiterate, you're going to be in this curriculum tab and it's going to show ELA. You just click over here to math. There you are. And then you can search integers, lesson on integers. And then here you are, and you're going to want to toggle all the way up to 7th grade. There it is. And then you can go into preview, and this is where we're going to model that analysis piece. Okay. So we may have had students do this part asynchronously in a Jamboard. They may have done this first read and answered the questions before they came to class. And now we're in the synchronous meet. We've amplified student voices, and we're going to do this analytical portion. And so here you'll see the passage. And a couple things I want to call out to you for supports for kiddos is you click on the vocabulary. It's going to define it for you. There's a read aloud function and of this, and then you can use the read write extension on your Google Chrome toolbar to have the reading function on this text over here. And so here, the analytical part involves close reading using highlighting. So we're going to use the aqua highlight to highlight information about patterns, and we're going to use the pink highlight to look at the patterns we're seeing in these tables down here. And just a note, all of the notes that we're putting in this annotation, so when students are doing this, it's going to save those notes that they're writing and they can use them over here when they're writing their final answer. So that's a really great feature that really is building in that metacognitive piece that my analysis that I'm doing should appear in my reasoning, right? So Sarah and I are going to walk through this. So I will do the highlighting and she's going to kind of do the think aloud.
And I definitely think that the first time you do this with students, you need to walk through and model this for them so they can see how you're processing. So we're going to start with the aqua highlighter, and that's information about patterns. So Patterns in Integers by Jose Salamanca?
Perfect.
Okay. Patterns are all around us. They can be found in nature, science, architecture, and even languages. Patterns are also found in math and can be very helpful. So I would definitely want to, yes, highlight found in math because I'm wondering what patterns they're talking about. So that's a wonder for me, and I'm going to type that on the note and save that because I wonder what they're talking about patterns that are found in math. I mean, we just do them with numbers, so that's interesting. And finding and understanding patterns is a great strategy to solve problems. A strategy, well, I want to highlight that, a strategy to use to solve problems. So I'm wondering how I can use that both today and how I can maybe use that in the future because that's a problem-solving strategy. We can use what we learn from finding patterns to identify a rule and help us solve more challenging problems. So I want to highlight finding patterns to identify a rule. And this is something that, you know, I definitely want to talk to my students about a rule because like in my classroom, I talked about a rule being a shortcut. So today I need to find a pattern that will help me identify a shortcut for solving problems. And we're going to, using your knowledge of addition, look for a pattern to fill in the tables below. The first rows have been completed for you. And if I can just highlight, look for a pattern to fill in the tables below, because that's what I need to do. So I want to be sure that I accomplish that task as we progress.
Sarah, what you're modeling right now, is that what the student is doing, or is that what the teacher is doing and showing to the student?
That is a great question. So the first time you do this, I highly recommend you do what I'm doing right now with your students, so they can see how to do the thinking aloud along with this type of problem. So you are modeling the type of thinking and note-taking they should take when they do these problems, because this is new to them. It's a different way of looking at it. Eventually, they will do it on their own. The goal is to get them to do it completely on their own, because that's what K-Prep problems will be like. So, but this is a way for us to scaffold that learning so that it builds up their self-esteem so that they can accomplish the task. So definitely model it with your students the first time.
You had mentioned earlier about the steps. I wish somebody would type in the chat what those steps are from CERCA, because we haven't gotten that far with our training on it.
Like the ones across the top here where it says connect, read, and like we're on analyze in the blue on this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Those are the steps each time. It took me a while to figure those out too. I'm like, oh, those are the steps.
Okay.
And they're going to be there every time.
Thank you, dear.
So when you, whatever problem that you're, or task that you're doing, it's going to follow this same thing, and the student's sort of production or their answer is going to follow the CERCA, which is claim, evidence, reasoning, counterclaim, and audience awareness, right? Today we're focusing on claim, evidence, reasoning, but these same steps apply, and the CERCA applies to how they're responding every single time in any content area. Now, this part is unique to math a little bit. This top part is disciplinary literacy in math.
And like she said, that's on every prompt. So every prompt I've looked at, it goes through those steps and it'll walk the students through. This is what students will see. So if we'll scroll down to the table. So I know that my task is to identify patterns. So I'm looking for patterns. I still need the aqua, because the pink is just for the sums, and I'm not there yet. So if you highlight that 3 that you were highlighting, I noticed that going down that column, all the numbers are 3. So I noticed that the first column, all the numbers are 3. And then if we go to the second, the add 2 after the operation, and highlight that 3, I notice that going down this column, all the numbers are decreasing by 1. And then if you'll switch to pink and highlight the 6, or the entire equation, that's fine too. The sum here is 6. And I'm wondering what happens to the sum when one of the numbers is changing that I'm adding. Okay. And then I think I still want the pink. So if you'll highlight the 3 plus 2, that equation, and 3 plus 2 I know is 5. And then highlight 3 plus 1. And that sum is 4. And 3 plus 0, we're going to go right down the column. 3 plus 0, highlight that, that will be 3. 3 plus -1 would be 2. Yep. I noticed that too, is that now I'm adding a negative number instead of a positive number. So then 3 plus -2. So I was going 6, then 5, then 4, then 3, then 2. So I think this sum is 1. And then highlight 3 plus -3. And the sum is 0. And I notice here that 3 and the -3, when I just look at the numbers, they're the same number. Just one's positive and one's negative. And the sum here is 0. And then 3 plus -4, I'm going to highlight that. And I noticed that the 4, when I just look at 3 and 4, that this is the first time the negative number, that number is larger than the 3.
Would I put something like absolute value here, or is that not something a seventh grader?
Some may, most likely not. And that's where, as a teacher, whenever we see these pieces and we give the feedback, that's where we can talk about that vocabulary. Most likely they won't. And then that sum was -1. And so there is another table where they can analyze the patterns again. I'm not going to walk you all through that piece because we have enough evidence that we can use to go on to the next piece. But like Suzanne was saying, she was asking about that vocab. Whenever the next couple of steps, you'll get the opportunity to provide feedback. And so that is where that feedback would come in, is what vocabulary term could we use to describe this relationship.
And just, sorry, go ahead if someone had a question.
I don't see anything in the chat right now, but I'll keep us updated.
So just something to note again is that those notes that I just created, I can use over here in the build and create. So my, what it's showing is as I'm reasoning through this, as I'm starting to see these patterns, and when I'm modeling this and building in that math vocabulary, then I can take those note cards and use it to develop my final answer to this question, which is supposed to make a claim, use evidence from the table, and then reveal the student reasoning, right? So just that's a really, really nice feature for students to see the connection between the task text and their final product. So the next step is summarizing. And so what we would like you all to do in the chat, you can use these sentence stems if you need to, but we would love for you to summarize the task. So in the chat, please summarize what the task is here. So summarize what the problem is in the chat, and we'll give you just a moment to do that.
Yes, Carlton, looking back at what we highlighted and using that to help you determine what the task is. So patterns can be used to help discover a rule. I need to make a claim about a rule for adding positive and negative integers. Patterns can be used to determine a relationship or rule. Yes, Ms. Roby said that Carlton took her answer. It was exactly what she was going to say and that she agrees. Excellent.
So thank you all for summarizing the task. It seems like you have a pretty good sense of what your task is, and we have some really great evidence and reasoning highlighted over here. So our next step is to make a claim. And we are going to use a virtual engagement strategy for that. We're going to use a Google slide. And I just wanted to show you here under this builder for the claim, some of the supports that are here to remind kids what the claim is. So I just wanted to toggle that out for you. But right now, if you're in the slide deck, what we'd like you to do is go to the silent conversation virtual protocol that's in there. So I'm going to click over there in the slide deck. And it looks like this. And so what you're going to do is make a copy of slide 2 right here. We can just hit Command or Control C, and we're going to make a copy, and we're going to put our name on it, and we're going to make a claim around this prompt. And then after you've made your claim, we'd love for you to go comment on some of your colleagues' work. So if, for example, if Sarah makes a claim and she doesn't give a reason, I might say, I noticed that you are making a claim about integers, but I wonder how you could include the word because to begin to show your reasoning, right? So here are our steps: make a copy, develop a claim, and then comment on someone else's claim. And I'll give you just a couple minutes to do that.
Is it slide 9? Oh, wait, make a copy of slide 2.
So slide 2 is just a template that so students would just make a copy of slide 2, and then whatever, then you type in the slide that you make. So you just hit copy
Okay.
the slide, then copy it into the deck, and then you type in that slide.
Oh, so I do it off your sharing, not the slides.
No, you got to do it off the slides. So
Well, slide 2 is goals.
you need to go into is slide, in the original one, it's slide 9.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
silent conversation.
Yes, there you
Okay.
go. Excellent.
Thanks, sorry.
Mhm.
I will be right back. I got someone at the front door. Unless you all want to hear a dog bark and go crazy.
No problem. All right, so it looks like you all have a claim and some are starting on your evidence from the task, so that's great. Could you pick a slide, next step, pick a slide and comment on one of your colleagues' claim, and with an I notice and an I wonder. So meta instructional moment here. I purposefully put a claim that was wrong in here. And I see that Ms. Carlton is commenting on it, which is excellent. So this functions as a just-in-time formative assessment, and probably other students would respond to this. And it might also make them wonder about their own reasoning, because it's forcing them to answer the question, why is this wrong? And then formulate a question in response to my wrong claim. So that's why this engagement strategy is not only important for the engagement piece, but also for the formative assessment piece, and the reasoning aspect.
And so if we think about how to do this in a virtual classroom with our students, of course, we've modeled that analyzed piece, and now we are starting to make our claim and build that claim. We would get students started on this process, and then we would ask them to make their comment, and we can release them then, and they do that asynchronously. So this piece here, the build and create, could be done asynchronously because we could get them started with us during our synchronous session, and they could finish that asynchronously, and that'll give you even more formative assessment data to help them develop and provide feedback to make a better and stronger claim.
Okay, so the way that I've designed this is to have the exit ticket be refining your claim based on people's comments and then adding evidence and reasoning. So Sarah, do you want to take it from here? I've got a screaming little person. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm going to try, yep, I'm going to stop sharing her screen and pull over mine and get rid of all this stuff. Shift to the other screen. All right. So we were here. So when she designed it, the piece that we just did was to be done synchronously, and then asynchronously they would refine their claim and add evidence and reasoning. And so then that's what they would turn in and finish up on their own. And so that takes us through start to finish what a ThinkCERCA task would look like. So now you understand what it looks like from the student perspective. You participated in one and you've seen how you can use that in synchronous and asynchronous sessions with your own students. And we want to start thinking about how ThinkCERCA connects to our math vision. So on the screen is our K12 Math Vision, and I'm going to give you 1 minute to read our vision, and I want you to think about how the process and the task that we just did, how does that relate to our K12 Math Vision? Okay, so now in the chat, I want you to put a response. So how does a ThinkCERCA task help us bring to life the K12 Math Vision? So if you could just take a minute to type your response in the chat, and so we can all read your responses. Starts as a starting point for facilitating math discourse. Students have to show their evidence and their reasoning. There's lots of reasoning and problem solving going on throughout it, hitting into those higher levels of depths of knowledge as they're working through and making that claim. Huge on that reasoning and problem solving. And that reasoning and problem solving is going to help build that conceptual understanding to the procedural fluency so that they can then apply that knowledge in the real world. Excellent. So then here is just a couple of ways that we thought about how ThinkCERCA helps us meet our math vision. It builds on that conceptual understanding to procedural fluency. They have to explore the mathematics, so they get to play with it and they get to justify their claim, which is exactly what our instructional framework is intended to do. You're developing independent learners because you're scaffolding for them how to respond. So when I'm on K-Prep and I have that new extended response problem and I have to make a claim, if I did 2 to 3 of these during the year, I can think about what did I do whenever I had to do this in class. Well, first I highlighted the important information. I figured out what evidence I needed. Then I started to build that claim and then I refined it. So it's giving them a structure to follow it because it models those new K-Prep questions, focuses on that mathematical reasoning by using and pulling in those different representations. When I was going through as a teacher, looking at all the slides for your silent conversation that we had on the slide deck, I was able to see that one student brought up number lines. So now I can connect number lines to those patterns and how we see those and visualize those as mathematicians. And we incorporated those mathematical practices as we were modeling with the mathematics and making sense of it because we're applying what we know to a new situation.
And I think just in reflecting on this process and what you all put as your claims and thinking about how I might have been taught math, like I may have just been given that rule, right? Like oh, when you add two positives together, and it might have been in the form of a rhyme or a poster in the classroom, right? But I never was taught how to reason through a math problem or apply strategies, and we know that by the time we get to algebra or even later, sometimes the rules don't apply, or if we don't know why and we just have these procedures, we just get stuck. We can never come to the appropriate conclusion. So I just think if I had had this type of instruction and been forced to think in this way, my rules might not have run out, right? As I got into more college math and so forth.
And so that takes us through connecting to the math vision. So how could you see yourselves using ThinkCERCA in your math classroom? So I want you to think about that for a minute, and when you're ready to respond, you can unmute and talk, or if you just want to respond in the chat of ways that you could see how you can use these tasks within your own math classroom. Oh, Miss Spencer, I am so glad that you said that, using it as a formative assessment, because I think this provides so much information if you use this as a formative assessment. Think about what we just did and how much I was able to assess and see where we were in our understanding of this concept. Yes. Yes, it does take a little bit of time, like thinking through how you could use it, where you could build it in. Definitely not an everyday tool, but definitely 4 to 5 times per year. Yes. Even 4 to 5, I think that's a lot for math, because we're trying for 7, right, Suzanne, in all content areas. So you have 4 content areas to get 7. So our goal this year is if we can do 2. Get 2 in this year in all contents, and we would be good to go.
But if you want to do 5,
yes,
please, your ELA teachers we'd be so happy.
And then that's what Cindy said too, that we're using the same format in language arts as in math. So then it's going to get students into that mind frame and providing that structure and procedure so that it becomes routine for them. Excellent. Great conversation. So on this slide, we just gave some different ways that you could use it. I definitely think it starts as this conversation point for interdisciplinary lessons. They are supporting questions for the driving questions within our curriculum frameworks. CFAs, man, I think this is an excellent use of a common formative assessment, because I think you're going to get a whole lot of information about where your students are. You can have possible backpack artifacts with it. It's practice for K-Prep, an asynchronous learning opportunity. And then Suzanne's going to go into those last 2, because those are links that you can use that will help you. And she said that you can track data too within the ThinkCERCA platform. So Suzanne?
Yeah, so let's actually this time, well, no, let's start with the Circa Any Math problem. And so I'm just thinking about a year of instruction, maybe after you do that first kind of lesson that models the connection, uses those virtual engagement strategies, and once students go through one of these, then you can apply this same framework to any math problem. And so what this document shows is, like, just for this example, what is the value of X, justify your solution. I'm sure that initially you may not get the detailed level of student responses that you're looking for. Like, you're not probably getting into their thinking sometimes. Well, if you use the CERCA framework for the response, you can see that claim, initial reason, evidence with example, and then holistic reasoning around the mathematics, right? And so if you ask them to write their responses to problems in this way, I think that could be really helpful to students, prepare them for K-Prep, build your mathematical practices, those kinds of ways to integrate that. Is it practice 4? Is that right, Sarah? So this is just kind of a framework to show you how to use it. And then we have put together a virtual engagement. So those strategies that you saw for each section, we've kind of pulled them together here, which gives you some virtual engagement strategies for synchronous learning. And these are sort of just best practices, instructional strategies for synchronous learning. I think sometimes maybe we're getting on that synchronous meet and we're just talking at kids rather than facilitating. And so these are some really great tools that you can use to facilitate those synchronous meets. And if you click on the slide deck, it gives you just a how-to. It's just the same thing. It's just a one pager in more depth. And then Sarah, could you really quick show the alignment? Because I think that'll really help. As I was hearing your teach, I don't think it's linked. Did I link it? I didn't.
I would say I'm not seeing it.
I'll just put it in the chat. Hang on.
Okay. Wait. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. All this switching. So while she's pulling that up, this was one of those virtual engagement strategies. So it's step 1. Here's the hook, a description of it. And then the other strategy was debate the class discussion question and how to do that. And it does that for each step of the ThinkCERCA process. So it goes through each one. Okay, and I'm going to pull up the crosswalk because this is going to be very important for you all. Suzanne, I'll let you go talk about this.
So in order to get to that, and the number 7 is just in research about the efficacy of this platform, in case studies and in the independent research, participating in 7 writing lessons a year is where we saw the most growth from students. And so you'll see here all of the content areas, and by time of year, the writing lessons that align to their curriculum frameworks. And so Sarah has put for you in that far right column, you'll see 6th grade. In October, this is where you are on the frameworks, and this is a 6th grade ThinkCERCA lesson that aligns to what you might be doing, and you could just choose. And so the idea would be that at the school level, we're coming together as an ILT or as teachers in an interdisciplinary way to think about, okay, in September, ELA is going to do the baseline and a ThinkCERCA writing lesson, and then we're going to have this one in science coming in late October, and then in November is going to be math, right? So that you don't want kids doing ThinkCERCA all day every day. That's not the intent. It's a supplement sort of thing. But if we could put these puzzle pieces together across a year, then we also are opening up conversations for interdisciplinary work. And in looking at some of these math tasks, like even I was just thinking about the patterns in nature and man-made patterns, what could we do in collaboration with an English teacher or an art teacher around that would build in this math, right? And so hopefully this is building out some possibilities for interdisciplinary planning and design. So this is just sort of the district level. These are the ones that are available, that are aligned, and then you would use this document to create one similar for your school.
And so that brings us, I think, to the end. There were 2 questions that I put on here because I just want to call this out. You know, for ELA and math, we both have SMART goals for our work, and ThinkCERCA directly aligns to our SMART goal because ours is about using multiple representations and then students making sense of that in a real world context. So this is allowing them just another opportunity to do that, which then is also helping ELA in their SMART goal. And Suzanne, you want to talk more about your SMART goal?
Yeah, ours is just to grow students' writing performance. So as I'm sure you all are aware, just even as a district, almost at every school, our writing scores have been, I mean, they're just on a free fall. I would call it a precipitous downturn. And so, and we know that writing is the primary way to make students' critical thinking visible. And so it's really alarming from a literacy perspective to see what's going on with writing. And so we wanted to have this platform to be a primary driver of working to improve instruction in writing, to get at school-wide literacy, because we know ELA teachers and reading teachers can't do that alone. We have to have systems, but we have to do it in a way that honors the discipline. We don't want math teachers to have to be doing writing in their classroom that isn't authentic to the tasks that mathematicians do, right? So I'm really hopeful that our work together can support our students in better composition and ways of expressing themselves.
Absolutely. And this is one tool that we can use that would support both of those. So that brings us to the end of our session. I'm going to copy the link for the exit slip so that you can complete that and put it in the chat. Please complete that, because that lets us know what we need to plan for future sessions and if these were beneficial. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Suzanne or myself. There will be additional training on ThinkCERCA in the next couple of weeks, I think in November. So there will be follow-ups and we can help you get these started. If you need me or Casey or Elizabeth to come in and help monitor and model with you how Suzanne and I did, we'll be happy to do that whenever you start to use these.